Now I want to talk about what else is going on in the movements. So, as we know, the New York Police Department has been sort of at the vanguard of this thing. You know, the big police agencies like the NYPD, LAPD, the ones that sort of have a long history of abuse or malfeasance, they are catching a lot of the fire because they're so big and there's so many people there. And a new development came about last night. So the NYPD, they were actually talking about defunding the police. So as we recall, after George Floyd, after the Black Lives Matter protests came about, after Chop and Chaz were set up and these protests started sort of coalescing from around the country, we started to ask the question on the show, what do these people want? What does everybody want? I mean, for a long time, I've proposed solutions. I have a whole list of solutions that we've covered on this show, but I just haven't gotten a good sense about what is going to solve these issues moving forward. So in other words, if somebody had a list of everything that we could just go down the list and say, yeah, it's a to-do list, check that, check that, check that, is this going to solve the issues? That would be helpful in moving the ball forward. But instead, what I saw was a lot of just, burning the buildings, looting, breaking things, and causing havoc, which doesn't help at all. So as this whole thing started to progress, we started to see some leadership come about. We started to see some political parties try to jump in and kind of stake their ground and create their claims and capture part of this movement. And what we started to hear was that they wanted to defund the police. That's kind of been the catchphrase that we've been seeing on the news and all over the place. Defund the police has been the big one. And so New York City, or the New York Police Department and the New York City Council, had that opportunity yesterday, and they started it. They started actually defunding the police. Here's what it looked like. So the New York City Council approves a $1 billion cut to the NYPD. And here's some stats that Miss Faith put together. So the city has lost about $9 billion in revenue due to the pandemic, and $1 billion will shift from policing to education, social services, and other agencies. So I believe that the original budget was around $6 billion. And so they're cutting a big chunk of that off the top. You have $6 billion for the fiscal year 2020, and so they're cutting $1 billion off the top of that, which is a big number. You can see here that where is it going to go? It's going to shift from policing to education, social services, and other agencies. The cuts are going to be about $484 million from the annual $6 billion budget. They're going to cancel $1,200 person police recruiting class, stop overtime spending, shift school safety, cut back on crossing guards, and homeless outreach, which is hysterical that they're going to cut back on crossing guards. I didn't realize that they were paying for those things. I thought that those were sort of senior citizens who lived in the neighborhood who just wanted to help, kind of volunteer and help out. But I didn't realize that the NYPD was paying for crossing guards. Doesn't surprise me that the government is going to just, overspend for a bunch of stupid stuff that we could probably, find other people to do. But that's their business, right? And here's the other part of it. The other $430 million will be reinvested in the NYPD's budget into youth and social services programming. So, $1 billion off a six budget. What is that, like 15%? Right around there, between 15-20%, or maybe a little under there. Ryan does all the math at our law firm. I don't do that. So it's right around there. It's a big cut. 15% is a big cut. $1 billion is a lot of money. And I've been very curious to see, okay, well, maybe this is going to be enough. Maybe this is going to be what everybody wants to see. We're talking about defunding the police. The NYPD Council is approving, a major cut, $1 billion. That's a lot of money for a big city. And maybe that's going to be enough. Maybe people will be happy about that. And we can start moving the ball forward on this whole issue of criminal justice reform and race relations and police brutality and all of that good stuff. Well, did it solve the issue? No, it didn't. We have a response to the cuts that it's not enough. Alexandria Ocasio Cortez called the New York City proposal to cut $1 billion disingenuous illusion and insisted on defunding the police means defunding the police. It means we don't want any police anymore, which is, in my mind, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, she's a young woman. She won a primary completely unexpectedly and has sort of risen into the national spotlight in a lot of ways and leading a lot of the charge on sort of this this left-wing kind of, new type of Democratic Party. She's sort of the face of that in a lot of ways. And so I was really curious on how her and, Ilhan Omar and some of the other ones, some of the people who are far on the left and sort of leading the charge on these reform discussions, what are they going to want? Is this going to make them happy? Or are they serious? Like, do they really want to defund entire police departments? And it looks like that. I mean, it actually does look like that they're basically doubling down on this thing. $1 billion was cut. Not enough. Defunding the police means defunding the police. And Miss Ocasio-Cortez, she just won her primary, so she's going to be back in Congress, and she's going to be leading the charge on this thing. A couple other people, advocates of taking over the PD, argued that the cuts did not go far enough. Richard Bury Jr., who's the former deputy mayor, says, this budget is BS. These aren't real cuts to the NYPD and don't reflect a fundamental shift in the nature of policing in New York City. I'm not saying no police, but we need a new approach to policing. This budget was an opportunity to begin that journey, and it fails to do so. Which, I would agree with that, right? I mean, if the NYPD is cutting crossing guards and homeless outreach people who were a part of the NYPD for some reason, does that address the problem at all? Does that, did the crossing guards murder George Floyd or Rayshard Brooks or Breonna Taylor? Did they? No. Did the homeless outreach people? No, they didn't. It was the uniformed police officers. So, of course, I have not read the budget. There's a lot of line items in there. It's a big, complicated thing. But you can see how people are falling on either side of the aisle. New York Police Department, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says, some people are just never happy. That's it. They're just never happy about anything. And he's right on that. I have not a lot of good to say about that particular mayor, but he's right. Sometimes people are just not happy. And what is going to end up happening, I think, is there is going to be a compromise of some sort. I do not think that the police officers or the police agencies or the departments are going to get away unscathed in this debate. They're going to have to make some cuts and concessions. And it's going to be the same from the other side, too. Also from the defund the police people. We're not going to defund entire police departments. It's not going to happen. And I don't even know if it should happen. That's a whole separate conversation. There are many good cops. A lot of them are not, but there are good cops. We want to support more of them, and we want to make sure that they have the resources they need, the training, the healthcare, the education, the ability to go do a good job and not be bad popo, not be bad police. So that's my takeaway on it.